Amazing. That'll get your blood moving. That Ashokan Farewell always reminds me of the Ken Burns Civil War series. I always get those images of the battlefield. Ahoy, good morning. How is everybody? Now, hands up, who celebrated International Pie Day yesterday? Wow, more than I thought. So International Pie Day, who thinks it's about eating as much pie as you can? Well, it kind of is. So International Pie Day, I'm surprised. That's awesome. So many people know. It is in recognition of the mathematical expression of pi, the circumference of a circle divided by its radius, which is super nerdy, but a lot of people seem to be getting into it. Now, bonus points for why you celebrate it on the 14th of March. The third month, 14th day, 3.14. Very good. Also Einstein's birthday, by the way, just by happenstance. Now, if you let International Pie Day slip through by your attention, it's totally forgivable because it falls in the shadow of another holiday, which we are going to celebrate today, St. Patrick's Day, which comes up on Tuesday. Now, and you're going to hear a lot more wonderful music like this. Now, you may be wondering, what does any of this have to do with the theme of today's service, which is words you're not allowed to say? So you've got blue language and green beer. What's the connection? What's the link? Well, I must confess, I had to work hard to find one. Typically, the words, the theme of the service, and the music, they go like this, thanks to the genius of Allison. This week, we were kind of building the channel from different directions without communicating, just kind of hoping they would meet in the middle. And I think they did. And here's the connection. Both sides of this thing, words and music, are about tackling invasive species. So St. Patrick was trying to drive the snakes out of Ireland, and I'm going to tackle the invasive species of churchy language in here that puts some people off. There's your link. And I know it's a little bit of a stretch. And either way, I think you're in for a treat. There's going to be some wonderful music. So I want you to just take the next hour and a little bit and just sit back and enjoy it, and take it as a break from your normally scheduled life. And in a dark time, this is a chance to just exhale and be together. Let's start by singing. It's lovely to be here with you.
Please rise as you are able. Wake now my senses and hear the earth's call. Feel her deep power of being on. He will creation
Well, welcome again, everyone. Welcome to those for whom this is your longtime home and those who may be visiting us for the first time in this community, and maybe you're also new to the broader community of Unitarian Universalists, which amounts to many hundreds of thousands of people from around the world, people from a variety of life situations and circumstances who come here for companionable and stimulating and non-judgmental company on their journey, whatever that journey happens to be. Whatever your story, whatever faith tradition you grew up in, or maybe you didn't have one, whatever drew you to our front door this morning, we hope that somebody made you feel welcome already, and you're settling in and going, yeah, I made the right choice. With so many alternatives, including sleeping in on a Sunday morning, we appreciate that you chose to come and investigate us. My name's Bruce Grierson, and I'm part of a 5-person team who puts these services on, and I'm honored to be your service dog this morning. We meet here every Sunday in this beautiful building on the ancestral territory of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We're grateful to share the land and all that it holds and grows. And now to light our candle this morning, it's my pleasure to introduce Patrice Pratt, who's relatively new to us and has already made us better. And Patrice has had such a fascinating life, I couldn't do it justice, so you're going to get the treat of hearing about it from the horse's mouth. And here she comes.
As Bruce said, good morning, everyone. As Bruce said, he started to interview me because I'm not afraid to talk in front of a group. I've done a lot of things where I've been able to do that, but I'd go on and on and on. I know, and I don't. And Bruce and I were talking about the Academy Awards where they start playing music, right? So these guys. So anyway,
none of that.
So, but he did a first draft and then said, "How's that?" And I go, "Oh, no, that was wrong. No, that was wrong. That was wrong." So I said, "I'll just take it over and save you, okay?" And he goes, "Very good." So first of all, I want to tell you how I got here. I was shopping in Safeway over in Lynn Valley, and all of a sudden I hear someone go, "Patrice Pratt, it's Elaine Duval." We've known each other for 1,000 years approximately. Hi, Elaine, a very long time, grown up together in organizations and done lots of work together. But she goes, "Do you have any people that you talk to all the time, or do you have a relationship where you have good conversations with kindred spirit kind of people?" And I go, "Yeah, some, And she goes, "Well, I have the place for you." So here I am, and that would be about last April. And as people come up here just like I am and describe how wonderful it is to be here, the kindred spirits here, all of you want to talk to me and talk to each other. It's just so friendly and so welcoming that since last April, I've loved coming on Sundays and renewing acquaintances with many of you that I already know. So when the things that I've done, that I'll be really quick, and the hook's going to happen any second. Born in Akron, Ohio, grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, went to the University of San Francisco during the tune-in, turn-on, and drop-out era. Went to Beans in Golden Gate Park, and went to Fillmore West and all sorts of all that music. Janis Joplin lived down the street, so it was very interesting. Immigrated to Manitoba in 1969 after the assassination of Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, and the specter of Vietnam, all that's going on. So my former husband was a draft dodger. Those are the words they used in those days. I lived in Winnipeg for a decade and then moved to work in BC for the BC Government and Service Employees Union. There for 30 years, elected president of the NDP during that time. During the Mike Harcourt government, there was a scandal or two. You might have mentioned you might have heard of Bingo Gate and all those sort of things. I was on the national news. I mean, oh my gosh, it was very disconcerting and difficult. So I also announced then the resignation of the premier in those days. So that's a long time ago. And Bruce asked me, I do know where all the bodies are buried. I do. And so he said, well, anyway, that'll be interesting, Patrice. I am writing a memoir as well, which is due out in the fall. And the last thing Bruce said, what is your major accomplishment? And I said, Jordana's my daughter. One day she'll be coming. She goes, Mom, I don't want to go to church. I go, fine, sweetheart. But I'm going to come and you will see. She has Williams syndrome, an interesting condition, developmental delays and all sorts of stuff. President of the Williams Syndrome Association, did all that kind of stuff too. But she graduated from high school with a dogwood. So any teachers in the room, I know she got a dogwood, and that was a major accomplishment. I want that on my tombstone. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just
Oh, no, I do- no, I
unmuting.
have to.
That's awesome, thank you. When can we read the book with all the rest of the details
The
about your
fall,
life? In the fall. Okay, we're holding you to that.
I am.
Thank you, Patrice. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. All right, and you get to kick off the Joys and Concerns second candle over here because you have a birthday coming up on Tuesday, on St. Patrick's Day. Wait a minute, that's why you're called Patrice.
Yes.
Lovely. Here's another joy. This backdrop, Monaco Roberts is responsible for this. Creative idea and a significant undertaking to pull it all off. It was an hours-long process to set it up, and then the big reveal, and it's absolutely wonderful back there. Thank you for Monaco. Is she here? No. Now, Michelle Sheardon, where are you, Michelle? Hi. Do you want to have, I can slot you in right now for a minute or two, because I know you wanted to thank some people who you didn't, you can stay in your spot there if you want and just kind of project from the event on the weekend.
Thank you. Some of you came on Friday night to attend a film and had a discussion. And at the end, we didn't wrap up as smoothly as I would have hoped. So I forgot the thank yous. And so first, thank you to the board for letting us have the event. Thank you to Vandy Savage for your food. And just with your generosity of spirit and heart. Thank you to Marsha for partnership. Thank you to Pamela for social media. And to the volunteers who just showed up. And I appreciate everyone's attendance.
Okay, so for anyone who didn't hear all of that, Michelle is thanking everybody for their participation in the film event on Friday night, including Vandy Vandy and Frank for the wonderful snacks, and the board and Marcia for. It was a pretty good turnout, and it was a wonderful event. So thank you for all of that. I don't have anything down for on the sorrow side of the ledger. Does anybody have any news about Pat Brand? No. Okay. Back home, says Marcia. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the candle of global concerns. We have a slide for this one, I think. So I try to keep things light-ish up to this point in the service, but it's pretty hard as we turn our mind to global issues to avoid asking some big questions. So what do you think? Is Jane Hirschfield right here? Can the flecks of light really fight to withdraw all the darkness in the world right now? That's not a question I or anyone else can answer. We hold in our heart everyone directly involved in the spiraling situation in Iran, in Lebanon, and the rest of the Middle East, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Northwest Africa, in Myanmar, in Haiti, and the hate crimes on our own soil that have spun out of some of these wars. When people get scared, that's when authoritarian governments gain strength. They feed off fear. So I would invite you, really encourage you, not to let fear be the predominant emotion as we observe 2 minutes of silence right now. my tools are broken, so I can't fix my tools. How's that for a delicious predicament? I heard that the other day and I thought, you know what? That explains so much about our banana peel lives. We get stuck because the tools we need to fix things themselves need fixing. Words are tools. We use them to repair and maintain our relationships. So what happens when those words are broken? Or what if they work for some folks and not for others? And the folks they don't work for, they really don't work for, to the point where those people are downright offended by them. How many of you remember this guy? He was a comedian who emerged in the 70s. This is George Carlin. Hippie provocateur in the mold of Lenny Bruce. He was big on freedom of speech, exploring where freedom of speech collides with social mores, what words are acceptable and what are considered too dirty for prime time. He was always trying to figure out where the line was by stepping over it. So Carlin narrowed the no-go list of words down to 7. 7 words you can never say on television. And you see the problem already. To establish the 7 words that you're not allowed to say, you have to say the words that you're not allowed to say. And by the way, George Carlin's 7 words were the ones you'd expect, mostly about sex. That's the big taboo in our culture, at least in our prim Anglophone culture. Now, if we went to Quebec, you'd find the taboo words are mostly about religion. Blasphemy is the big no-no there. Why? Because Quebec was for so long under the thumb of the Roman Catholic Church. So to show disrespect to religion was like thumbing your nose at authoritarian daddy. And I think we Unitarians have a little bit of Quebecer in us, because we're not that bothered by profanity, in the George Carlin kind of way, sex words and scatological words. What makes us squirm, some of us, is churchy words, especially Christian-inflected words. Many of us grew up feeling stifled, or worse, by mandatory church attendance and a dogma we increasingly found a little bit fishy, or at least a little bit restrictive, exclusive. And as adults, we tried to distance ourselves from the thou shalts of organized religion. So the conundrum for us is, how do we talk in here with each other? And how might our language be landing on outsiders who might be wondering what this strange animal called Unitarian Universalism is all about, and could they belong in a place like this? How do we name the mysterious full-body yearnings within ourselves in a way that doesn't evoke the triggery old scripts? How do we respect the roots of this faith tradition, especially at times like Easter or Christmas, without the atheists feeling like they got a little bit of Jesus on them and they aren't too happy about it? So this congregation is, last we counted, around 50% secular humanist. So we have to figure this out. How do we communicate in a way that limits the harms while still meeting the needs of those who come here for spiritual nourishment? So here, after that pretty lengthy throat clearing at the beginning, is my list of the dirty 7. The dirty 7. God, church, prayer, faith, grace, sacred, and soul. All right, taking them in order. Dirty word number 1. The one that dare not say its name in here. The G word. Although it does a little bit. You heard it at least once in our opening hymn there. The UU minister Kimberly DeBoos has a story about this. There was a guy in her congregation who would physically recoil whenever Kim used the G word. And she did use it every week because they had a covenant that they repeated at the end. Thus do we covenant with each other and our God. So this guy, he knew it was coming, and he readied himself like a shortstop. God. And there'd be like a nail hole in your tire. He was adding an S to God. Gods. Not one God, but multiple gods. As many gods as there are individuals in this room. That's pluralism, UU style. Okay, dirty word number 2. Church. Church. In some ways, this is the big one. It's the main reason that the so-called nomenclature committee was struck up a year or so ago. We had to figure out, first of all, what to do with the sign outside, the one that says, or said, North Shore Unitarian Church. As I say, said, as a kind of stopgap measure, while we sorted things out as a community, the sea was sort of, you may have noticed, quietly whisked away, and lo and behold, NSU, all on its own, kind of worked. We became the North Shore Unitarians. Nobody complained too much. But that still doesn't solve the problem of where to tell the neighbors you're going on when you pile into the car on Sunday morning, right? So more on this in a moment. Dirty word number 3, prayer. Divisive word. Cuts the deck in half, in a sense. There are 2 ways you can be contemplative. Well, probably more, but the main 2. You can pray or you can meditate. Meditating is a safer thing to admit that you do. Prayer invites pushback from atheists because there's an element of petition to it, right? Please, cosmic bellhop, bring me this thing. Or a plea, get me out of this mess. I heard a scientist say, prayer won't help you if you run into a polar bear in the wild. Theists taste just like atheists. All right. But there's also a way to think of prayer that frames it as a kind of a stance, a way of living your life that gets around some of these issues. So more to come on that one in a sec. All right, dirty word number 4, faith. Is that what we are here, a faith? I've heard some call it a faith tradition. That's actually the term I use, or shared values. UU is a suite of shared values that shape our lives. Lots of grist for the mill there. Dirty word number 5, grace. Rebecca did a whole service on this one. We might define grace as something like a gift that you don't earn, expect, or deserve. Now, where that gift came from, well, Unitarians tend to deflect that question and instead concentrate more on the gift itself, the just being grateful for it. So, can we just swap out the word grace for gift or lucky gift or something like that? Or is something missing when you do that? I bet if you ask people, have you ever experienced a moment, have had an experience of luck versus have you ever had an experience of grace, you'd get a different answer. To my mind, grace is different. It's luck with wings on it. Dirty word number 6, sacred. Last Halloween, I did a service called Scared Sacred. I could not resist the anagram. And it's one of the reflections I'm actually most proud of, and nobody watched it. I think people were freaked out by the word. The poet Linda Gregg has a substitute word that I think means grace without saying it. Luminosity. You're trying to find the numinous shine in things, which is kind of a poet's job. Certainly, if you're a poet, she allows, you can produce fine poems without believing anything. But eventually, such a stance over a whole lifetime, she says, rots the seed corn of the heart. To me, what brings out the sacred without ever having to say the word is ritual. Sacred is the difference between a pilgrimage and a walk. Sacred is the difference between a gravestone and a death certificate. Sacred is embedded in the physical touch of our circle round ritual at the end. Sacred is what you get when you throw depth, meaning, and purpose into the wash together. And finally, dirty word number 7, soul. A surgeon was talking to his gardener, who was a little too woo-woo for the surgeon's taste, throwing around this word soul. The surgeon said, look, I have cut open 1,000 hearts, and I have never found a soul. And the gardener responded, I have accidentally cut open 1,000 daffodil bulbs with my shovel, and I have never seen a daffodil. So there we go. Set my 7 arbitrarily chosen words. Now, no doubt there are others that we can think of that could have made this list, and you can bring some of them up. We're going to have a little free-form discussion for anybody who wants to join after soup up here to throw around some of these ideas and where we go from here with them. All right, so back to the nomenclature committee. As I say, the short-term reason it started was that some people were uncomfortable about that sign out front. But there were broader issues here, and still are to some degree, that go beyond what we want for us in this building. A lot of us scratch our heads about why Unitarian Universalism, you see, there's one of the problems right there. This idea we love and we think so much, it has so much to offer to a broken world right now. Why isn't this place lined up around the block? What if it's not the fish that's the problem, but the fish wrap? There are a lot of spiritual but not religious people who might otherwise be all in on this project but are downright allergic to the theist language that they hear. So what if we could find secular alternatives that work just as well? Hence, the nomenclature committee, spearheaded by Brian Funt. Thank you, Brian, for taking the initiative. For what it's worth, the makeup of the committee was, I believe, 5-2 atheists over theists, which is a little atheist top-heavy as a general representation of this congregation. So we met in that little room off the foyer, what we used to call the minister's office, and we started spitballing candidate words for a makeover. Now, some of them seemed like an easy fix, and in a lot of cases we'd already fixed them. So no more sermons, they're reflections. That's actually a more apt word because a reflection is different from a sermon. No one wants instruction from the pulpit. What they want is companionship. They want a partner in speculation, to steal a line from the poet Carl Phillips. So no more sermons. Check. No more chancel. It's a stage. Check. No more pulpit. It's a podium. Okay. No more narthex. It's a lobby. Although I don't know if anyone ever called it the narthex. No more sanctuary. It's a hall. Okay. So far, so good. And now we came to the main item on the menu, the word church. A couple of years ago, the Campbell's Soup Company dropped the word soup from its company name. It's just Campbell's now. Campbell's Company. I guess they decided that the word soup was déclassé or something. Big religion is going the way of big soup. A lot of new churches are dropping the word church from their name. The Church of England reported that 900 new, smaller churches had popped up without the word church in them at all. They were networks or communities or circles. It seemed nobody wanted to call a spade anymore, or a church, or soup. So we, the nomenclature committee, got down to business. If we're not a church, what are we? Brian propped up a big whiteboard, and Sanford started taking down suggestions. North Shore Unitarian Community, okay. Has the advantage that we keep the C in the letterhead. And we still have the C from that sign out there. It's in a drawer someplace. We could put it back, no cost there. And community is a friendly word, right? But it's kind of abstract. It doesn't suggest a physical place I can give you a ride to on Sunday. What about center? Again, keeps the C and invites the use of this building as a gathering place for community events. What about North Shore Unitarian Sanctuary? Pretty good. Nice connotations, a place of peace and refuge. Still a bit churchy for some. North Shore Unitarian Forum, like where the ancient Greeks gathered to share lofty thoughts. Pretty good, though potential confusion with the landmark forum, which was kind of a sketchy pyramid scheme-ish thing that was big in the 80s. Haven. A safe place. Again, maybe like Haven by the Sea, maybe got dibs on that, but certainly in play. How about this one? Maybe not a serious candidate, but kind of accurate, I think. How about this one? Temple of Reason. Nobody actually floated that, but I thought of it later. Because remember, during a radical phase of the French Revolution, a group seized control of Notre Dame Cathedral, and they renamed it the Temple of Reason, until Napoleon stepped in and restored order, though not before all the religious statues and symbols were stripped out and the bells were melted down for their metal. So maybe not a vibe we want to emulate here. A Hall of Seeking. Some universities in the UK nickname their study halls halls of seeking. All right. So, as you can imagine, at this point, no horse was obviously the front runner. Somebody suggested there should be a nickname for the place itself, something short and easy to say, but kind of fit for the purpose. You remember when the Canucks played at GM Place, they called the building the Garage. That fit, right? So if you meet a fellow congregant at Safeway on a Wednesday, you might end the conversation with, "See you Sunday at the barn." Actually, that's what I call it. Nobody else does. So it was kind of a non-starter. How about the Cove? Has a cozy West Coast feel to it. Ahoy! How about the Hub? Very 21st century, goes down pretty smoothly. Jane's a member of my hub. The Web, as in Web of Life, principle number 7. That one got some traction. Here's one I didn't think of till later. The Dojo. Welcome to the Dojo. Meet you at the Dojo on Sunday. Wait a minute. Isn't dojo like a karate studio where people go to fight each other? Well, yes, they do martial arts in there, but the word dojo literally means a place for shared practice and mutual development. We could bow when we came in the door. All right, here's one we probably couldn't get away with because another faith has already claimed it, the Mandir. That's a Hindu temple, but Mandir, as my beloved Hindu connection in this congregation informs me, comes from the roots man for mind and dir for peace. So a mandir is a place you go for peace of mind. Ooh, that's where I want to be on a Sunday morning. How about this one? The iris. The iris, the center of the eye where the light gets in. But also an acronym. IRIS, inquiry, respect, inspiration, and service. Oh yeah, baby. Jen came up with that. Now, I had another idea for a word to replace church that didn't get very far with the group for obvious reasons. I said, why don't we just call it a cult? Well, the word cult comes from the word occult, which just means an unorthodox religion. And all religions are unorthodox when they start out. If they get popular, the un falls away. So a religion is just a cult that has stood the test of time. That's us. I'm kind of joking. The word would never fly, but this is the dog on the dinner table with the Unitarian Church. People confuse it with the Unification Church, the Moonies, who are definitely a cult in the pass the Kool-Aid kind of sense. Defamation lawyers are standing by. So that's another subject for another day. The eventual necessity, I would say, of coming up with a new name for this whole Megillah. Now, I should say that the atmosphere surrounding this discussion that we had was very positive and respectful and relaxed. So different from the last time this congregation tackled the issue of theistic language. A lot of you will remember, and apologies to any visitors this morning if I'm getting a little inside baseball-y here, but this is an important chapter of this congregation, and I think it has a lot to say about who we are and who we are evolving to be together. So, 9 years ago, we were having an existential crisis over this very issue. The schism had become so bad, and remember, this was years before the schism, the great schism of 2022-ish. The schism was so bad that the rivets were trembling on the good ship North Shore Unitarian again. And in stepped a new minister with a big heart and a good plan, and he called it his Wounded Words Initiative. And this, for those of you who are too new to have felt a warm pang when you saw that face come up, this is Marcus Liefert, then Marcus Hartleaf, who was our co-minister for the better part of 3 years with his wife, Emily. And Marcus was wise beyond his years, is wise beyond his years. He'd taken the pulse of the congregation. He knew what he had on his hands. He looked around the room and he said, folks, we have a spectrum of beliefs in here, from those who can't stand to be in a room where prayer is uttered to those who try to live every moment as a prayer, and everything in between. And Marcus said, I'm paraphrasing, some of you have been wounded by the kind of words we're debating in here today. And some of you have been healed by those very same words. The challenge is to try to hear those loaded words like God and salvation and faith, through the ears of the person sitting next to you. Imagine your neighbor and how those words might be landing for them. And then Marcus introduced a term that I'd never heard before, a word, compersion. Compersion. He explained that it's basically the opposite of schadenfreude. It means if this thing is giving you solace or really turning the key in the lock for you, then that makes me happy. Compersion is taking pleasure in someone else's pleasure. So I went home and looked that word up. It actually comes out of the polyamory community, so it's a bit spicier than I think Marcus intended in this context. I think maybe closer to the mark is the Sanskrit word mudita. Your happiness makes me happy. But, yes. Marcus said, this is an endpoint that people who love each other can arrive at despite their differences. I really believe that. So this is my challenge to you. Every time something happens here that makes you uncomfortable, take the opportunity to remember that it's feeding someone else. Enjoy the feeling that someone is on the other end of the seesaw. When you're down, they're up, and they're digging the view up there. And in very short order, Marcus had stilled the waters. And then, when he and Emily very suddenly had to leave us, just as things were getting great, one of the last things he said to us was, don't you dare let this tear you apart after I'm gone. After Marcus and Emily's departure, I went for a walk with a former member who would leave us in the next split, a guy I miss a lot. He'd been there in the sanctuary the day Marcus had given his stirring, wounded words speech. And he said, you know what? I felt like I was at an AA meeting there. Because the struggle he's talking about, that's our struggle too. Some say the higher power part has to be in the 12 steps, and some refuse to ever let the G word pass their lips. What AA did to solve that impasse was they tweaked the language a bit. They kept the phrase higher power in there, but they cushioned it a bit. A higher power was whatever you understand that concept to mean. It could be nature, could be a spiritual entity, it could be the group itself. The great psychologist George Valiant, who's John Valiant's dad, actually, he used to marvel at how AA made spirituality safe for human consumption. In those church basements, struggling strangers come together, and the sacred and the profane meet, and healing happens. It works because nobody calls anybody out for using the G word. Because they know that when somebody says it, it means something to that person that you will never precisely understand. All you know is that it's a little bit of light leading them out of hell and back into the world of the living. Now, I'm going to show my cards here, if I haven't already. And to be clear, I'm just one voice. The whole service, I hope, is the beginning of a conversation or the continuance of one. I think that, yes, it's a worthwhile exercise to give careful thought to the language we use here and how it might be landing inside this space and to the looky-loos on the outside who are kicking the tires. But maybe, the drive to rid you of all theistic language is as misguided as St. Patrick's drive to rid Ireland of snakes. Snakes might creep you out, but they actually have a valuable place in the ecosystem. And likewise, churchy words may make some of us uncomfortable, but they too have a valuable place in the ecosystem. If you kill them, something else in the chain of being dies. Robin Wall Kimmerer says, language gets in the way of our work here. In our deepest moments, words are an insult. We are people of the word, a lot of us. I'd say most of us. Language elevates us when it's used well, and it stings us when it's used in a way that's clumsy or inexact, or conversely, when it lands precisely dead center on some old wound. But I think Robin is right. Her idea that language, verbal language, can also be a barrier that prevents goodwill from getting through, that impedes connection. When you get right down to it, and I'm going to steal a term here from Dan Coyle, who has studied intentional communities around the globe, community building isn't done with words. It's done by taking on projects together. It's done by groups of people self-arranging toward a horizon. What unites us, all of us here, is that we aren't waiting for something better in a world beyond this one. For practical purposes, this is it. We've made the choice to take the transcendental walk together. We've come to explore the contours of what it feels like to be alive, what it means to be alive, and those things are beyond language. My own belief is that there's something here on this earth, in this life, that is bigger than us, a mystery incomprehensible to us. It doesn't really matter what name you give that, or whether the call's coming from outside the house or inside. These distinctions are absolutely not worth dividing ourselves over. In fact, the fact that some of us like sacred words and some of us don't strikes me as a feature, not a bug, of this place. Other faith traditions, no other faith tradition has atheists and theists sitting side by side taking the ride together. No other tradition is big enough to accommodate that idea. That makes us really weird in a wonderful and I think very forward-looking way. Maybe this is the injunction that lies on the other side of all the meditations and the prayers. Forget the nouns, do the verbs, circle up and pass the soup, and arrange ourselves in love and sympathy toward the horizon. Amen. I invite us now into the spiritual practice of generosity. Designated funds in our collection plate go directly to local nonprofits that we support. This month, that charity is the Wild Bird Trust of BC, which manages Maplewood Flats, which is a piece of land just off Dollarton Highway that serves as a bird sanctuary and a resting spot on their migratory routes. It's a great place to go and be in the real world for a while. Touch mud. The Trust does a lot of restoration and education work as well. Please support them to the extent that you're able. And you can donate in a variety of ways. If you pay cash, be sure to write your name on the envelope, and that way you'll get a tax receipt at the end of the year. Now, one more thing, as the baskets come around, you will see that there's something that I hope you will take, whether you give or not. There are pieces of paper in there, and there are 2 questions related to the reflection and the words that we're talking about here. And you can use the little golf pencil and check a box or save them till later, and then put them in the Johann suggestion box out there when you're done. And we want to just sort of get a sense of how this whole congregation feels about a couple of these questions. All right. That's it. Will the ushers please come forward? Thank you. In the meantime, over to you. Thank you for your generosity, ongoing inside this community and out. And thank you to those who pledge annually, which helps support our wonderful staff and maintain these beautiful facilities. All right, a few announcements here. It's Super Sunday, so after the service right now, you can slip down and please join us for some soup that Diane Hicks has prepared. Suggested donation, $5, but if you don't have it, please just come and pull up a chair next to somebody. Next Sunday, we have a guest in the pulpit, Janet Pivnik. Janet's a UU ministerial candidate who's currently doing an internship at Van U across town. She has a background in the education and environmental fields, and she's spent much of her career focused on how to support people through cultural shifts. Her service next week, supported by Rebecca, is on radical hospitality. How can we promote a culture of welcome? And how can we widen the circle so that nobody feels Robbie ruled out, nobody feels excluded? Janet will explore approaches to inclusion that are rooted in love and trust. And a final reminder that if you're interested to keep this conversation about the verboten words going, we're going to meet up here after soup. So please join us if you can. I think that's it. We're going to go to our final congregational song, full of all sorts of delicious Gaelic words that Alice and I were talking about last night. Keep your eye out for some good ones. Thank you.
Okay, put on your dancing shoes. Mari's wedding. Here it goes. One, two. Woo! Step gaily on we go. Hill for hill and toe for toe. Arm in arm and off we go. All for Mari's wedding. Over hill ways up and down. North green and crackling brown. Past the shieling through the town. All for the sake of Mari. Tone and candy feel. Plenty meat to fill her creel. Plenty body bears a wheel. That's a toast for Mari. On the right for brow and star. Brighter far than any star. Care soul and all my heart is my darling Mari. Galloping gaily on we go. Heel for heel and toe for toe. Arm in arm and rope and rope. All for Mari's wedding.
All right, let's end where we began, almost with the word prayer. It's about a 60-second close if you want to stay standing for it, or you don't have to. It's a lovely Jesuit idea that one ought to aspire to turn their whole life into a prayer. And when you think about it, that's what being contemplative is. Whether you're a monk in a monastery or just a regular punter out in the world, being alive to finding God in all things. Running everything through a spiritual filter that lets awe in and sort of amplifies the majesty of it all. The author John Koenig talked about this a little bit in a bit that ended up on the cutting room floor from my thing a couple of weeks ago. He said, in your daily life, in your relationships, in your work, or maybe when you're just surprised by a sunset and something bubbles up in you and you go, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. Where are these feelings coming from? That's when you begin to suspect that every moment you are alive is an invitation to encounter a universe that just maybe wants to encounter you back. That is what turns your life into a prayer, and that's something you don't have to apologize for, ever. Just put out the light. We extinguish this flame.
Carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope.
The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose.
We go forth with courage and love.
That's all she wrote. Thank you to everybody who made this service possible, and especially thanks to Claude Gilbert and Claude and Jim and Sevi and Nina and Tom and Paul.